suitable for brainwashing, or as Cameron preferred to call it, depatterning. Then, during the long sleep, the patient would be forced to listen to subliminal messages that were supposed to print new, sometimes bizarre thoughts on his blank mind.
I was aware of the speaker under my pillow. I was aware of the words.
Which were?
You killed your mother.
You killed your mother.
Yeah.
Who was alive and well.
Who was alive and well. And,
over and over again, this voice is...
well, like I say, it takes about 2 seconds to say that message. And this was going on for 23 days. And when I went home, after being there, and when I went home, my mother was there, and why was she there? And it didn't make any sense.
So what was going on here? Dr. Ewan Cameron was at one point head of the World Psychiatric Association and is still admired by some of his former colleagues. Dr. Peter Roper.
What is the possibility that we had a good, well-motivated man whose ego and ambition took charge of his professionalism and led him into some fairly dark places?
Well, I would put that chance as pretty slight. I think it's more likely that if he'd been around to defend himself when this story came out, we'd have a totally different picture of it.
What would he say? Put yourself in his shoes. What would he say?
I think he'd say, look, I treated these patients to the best of my ability. I didn't get all of them well, but most of them I got better than they were.
A travesty, I agree.
But in the movie, Dr. Cameron will not come off so well.
They're your patients. Most of these people were discharged as cured.
It accurately shows that many of his patients, inaccurately diagnosed as schizophrenics, were permanently damaged by his methods. Eventually, even Cameron had doubts about his experiments. He left the Allen in 1964, died of a heart attack 3 years later. By then, the hospital had quietly abandoned the experiments.
Destroy these people for nothing. You can't just walk away from this, Cameron. It'll come out and it'll ruin you. You can't walk away.
Nobody knows for sure exactly how many people Dr. Cameron and his colleagues exposed to the program of chemical and electroshock treatment they called depatterning and psychic driving, a process which some experts have since called barbaric. But many years would pass before there would be any public or official acknowledgement of what those damaged patients had been through. It would take a dramatic disclosure in the late 70s that the Allen Memorial had been part of a Cold War program of brainwashing experiments, paid for in part by the CIA. Hidden among its most sensitive files were CIA records documenting a project called MKUltra. Between 1957 and 1961, a CIA front funneled about $62,000 U.S. for brainwashing research by Dr. Ewan Cameron. The American media got the story first, but the Fifth Estate exposed the magnitude of the human tragedy.
Experimental drugs, including LSD, were administered to human guinea pigs. The patients were never told that their treatment was part of a CIA experiment.
I don't think we'll have radishes.
One of those patients was Velma Orlico of Winnipeg. She'd been at the Allen in the late 50s for treatment of depression. She happened to be married to a member of Parliament, David Orlico of the NDP. She'd considered Dr. Cameron a near saint. Now she was being told she'd been betrayed by him.
It was an awful feeling to realize when I found this out that the man whom I had thought cared about what happened to me didn't give a damn. I was a fly. Just a fly.
First, she felt hurt. Then she got angry and decided to sue one of the most powerful institutions in the world, the CIA.
As a matter of fact, when she said she wanted to sue the CIA, I said, "You're crazy. How can a hick from Winnipeg sue the CIA?"
But she did, along with 8 other former patients, a massive lawsuit that would consume many years and become an obsession for a distinguished American civil liberties lawyer named Joseph Rao.
Cameron, all he did was what the CIA was in effect asking him to do, and what he said he was going to do, and he did it.
Rao and a young assistant named James Turner knew they were up against a formidable opponent in the CIA, but they thought the odds would be evened a bit by help from a natural ally. They were in for a disappointment.
But we expected to have a very potent ally in the form of the Canadian government. And unfortunately, instead of helping their own citizens because the Canadian government was worried about its possible liability, the Mulroney government, in effect, stabbed its citizens in the back at every turn in the litigation.
Ottawa actually helped suppress a key piece of information, evidence that CIA officials at the U.S. Embassy had actually apologized to the Canadian government when the CIA experiments were first revealed. Jim Turner is still flabbergasted.
You got to understand how important these apologies and expressions of regret were. This is an admission. This is legally admissible in court because it is one of the parties to the litigation saying, I did something wrong and I'm sorry I did it. That is prima facie evidence of negligence and of wrongdoing that goes a long, long way to bringing the case to a timely conclusion instead of the protracted 10 years of litigation that we had.
And action.
Mr. Mulroney.
The movie underscores the impact of Ottawa's refusal to give the lawyers details of the CIA apology. The lawyers eventually upped the ante on the Fifth Estate.
And action?
Tonight on the Fifth Estate, startling revelations about the